I think I'm finally getting the hang of parkouring. I'm happy to say I've only fallen on my ass and face 4 times each in the past 24 hours. Carl says I got a ways to go, though. Still, that's something to be proud of. Nick's been making similar progress, so kudos to him. Well, with the pleasantries out of the way, I'm gonna pick up where I left off last week. We looked at the windows, several of which had only one shutter or none at all. The movement of curtains being parted drew our attention to the very top one. From the window, the woman stared down at us. From what the cashier told Carl, I was expecting her to be old. However, I wasn't expecting her to be this old. It's not much of an exaggeration to say she seemed almost mummified. She had to be in her late 80s, early 90s, maybe. Hell, I wouldn't have been surprised if I learned that she was over 100 years old. Carl waved to her, and she nodded back, then left her window to come downstairs and unlock the front door. Carl, are you sure about this? The guy said she's legit, and that he knows people who've been helped by her. She might be able to help Nick. Yeah, or summon Pumpkinhead. Look, just try to be polite with her. If she turns out to be crazy or a fraud, we'll leave right away. The front door opened, and the old lady stepped onto the porch. I've been expecting you three. Come on in and bring your friend inside, she said in a raspy voice. Without another word, she turned around and went back inside. Carl and I exchanged a look. Then he went to get Nick, and I followed the woman inside. Much like the exterior of the house, the interior was also gloomy as hell. Unlike it, though, it was actually easy on the eyes and pretty well upkept. As I was following her, we passed by a number of strange objects sitting on shelves in jars. I saw the dried petals of various flowers, along with different colored powders. There were also several different kinds of dried mushrooms I'd never seen before, and something that gave me cause for concern. I didn't get a good look at it, but I'm pretty sure it was a jar containing green liquid and a single human eye. So, I said, breaking the deafening silence, how did you know we were coming? Did someone call you? No, I haven't used my phone in years. Its ringing annoyed me. I was told of your arrival by the tea leaves. We passed by an old rotary phone covered in cobwebs and a thick layer of dust. I was concerned, asking her exactly how old she was, then figured that wouldn't be polite, so I got right to asking her if she could do anything to cure Nick. I'll have to get a closer look at him when your other friend brings him inside. In the meantime, you should tell me how he came to be afflicted by his ailment. You three have seen things most people shouldn't, correct? Did the tea leaves tell you that too? No, you just have that scent. The room she led me to was dimly lit by a number of candles. Compared to what I had seen in her house so far, it didn't appear that unusual. It contained a large, filled bookshelf, some armchairs, a coffee table, and a roaring fireplace. On it was a tea kettle with steam still coming from the spout, and some cups on saucers. Make yourself comfortable. I did so, and then proceeded to explain things as best I could. I summarized what our town was like, and our encounters since leaving it. She listened to this thoughtfully, and spoke once I was done. It sounds like you have had quite a lot of trouble. Well, that's an understatement. Carl came into the room, lugging Nick over his shoulder. Where should I put him? In front of the fireplace. Carl placed him there, and then the woman went over to Nick. She examined him, muttering something to herself as she did. Once she was finished, she stood back up and faced us. So, is there anything you can do for him? I asked her. It will be a long and difficult process, but I think he can be saved. We perked up at that. Good, Carl said. What do we need to do? I need to gather some things. While I get them, I need you two to drink some of this tea. She poured it into the cups and then brought them to us before turning to leave. I stared down at the cup, unsure of whether or not I should drink it. Ever since seeing the movie Get Out, I've been pretty apprehensive about drinking tea from strangers. Still, it appeared and smelled all right. Pretty good, actually. I detected a lemony, minty fragrance coming from it, with a cinnamony hint. I glanced over at Carl, who was already sipping his tea. With a shrug, I began drinking. I'll admit now that it tastes quite good. It seemed to have been sweetened with honey instead of sugar. Do you feel any different? I asked Carl. Not as far as I can tell. The old lady returned, carrying an old leather-bound book with one jar of blue powder, dried rose petals, and dried mushrooms. Did you drink the tea? Yes, I replied. What was that for anyway? You'll soon see. I need you two to help me with this. She directed us to lay the powder down around Nick, then place one mushroom and one petal along it until it was completely covered. As he was doing that, I was to read something from the book. There was a bookmark on the page that I was supposed to be reading from, so I opened the book to it. However, when I did, I found it to be filled in an ancient-looking runic language. Hey, I can't read this, I said to the woman, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor in a meditative pose with her eyes closed. That's what the tea is for. I added powder into it that will help you. Don't read what's on the page. Feel it. Right. The only thing that I could think of was that she meant for me to take her words literally. I closed my eyes, running my fingers along the page. I felt a surge of energy from the book. What happened next, I could only describe as me being possessed by some force. Before I even realized what was happening, words in an unknown language came spewing out of my mouth. Not only did that happen, there were also visions. I saw visions of every horrific thing I had ever seen, beginning with seeing Nick in his current state at that point. Getting sideswiped by multiple flashbacks is freaky as hell. But what scared me the most was the last one. Everything seemed bigger to me. It took me a moment to realize that was because that memory was of when I was still a baby. I was in front of the fireplace of my home, which was unlit at the time. Large fuzzy dice and toy blocks sat in front of me. A lit-up Christmas tree illuminated the room, which would have been pitch black otherwise. In the middle of playing with my toys, I heard a low scratching noise coming from the fireplace. Two long and dark fur-covered arms, ending in razor-sharp claws, poked out of it, digging into the marble.